Okay, all right. So now we'll continue to the last type of epithelial cells, and that is your renal tubular epithelial cells, or your RTECs or RTEs. Now, this is the most significant na epithelial cell. If pauntahan can say largest cell gyud, it's your squamous epithelial cell. But when you say the most significant epithelial cell, that is your RTE. Why? Because again, by the name itself, renal tubular. So gikan siya sa tubules mismo sa imong ihi. Ihi sa imong kidneys mismo. So gikan sa PCT ba, sa DCT, or sa collecting duct. Okay? Now, it appears, it varies in size. Okay? Usually, again, kung asa sila na tubules gikan. Okay? Each tubules has their own type of shape. Okay? Alright. And eccentric again ang nucleus, meaning wala siya na center. Off-center siya. Okay? Alright? And then possibly bilirubin stained or hemosiderin laden. Now, di ba in our chemical exam, bilirubin stained because in times na liver damage, di ba, mo release og bilirubin ang ihi. Mo release og bilirubin na, or the presence of bilirubin happens or occurs in the ihi na. So what happens is pwedeng ma-absorb na siya sa imong RTEs. Alright? And if nakay problems sa imong tubules, masulod or ma-release po ng RTEs sa ihi na naay bilirubin. So pag stain niya, ma-appeal po ang bilirubin. So muna siya bilirubin stained. Usually seen again in liver disease. Now, hemosiderin, when you say hemosiderin, guys, this is just parang a further breakdown of hemoglobin, di ba? In terms of mga massive hemolysis, so daghang hemoglobin sa imuhang kidneys. Alright, so what happens is pwedeng ma-absorb sa imong RTEs ang hemoglobin, and then further breakdown, may muna siyang hemosiderin, and then pag stain ana niya using a Prussian blue ba na stain, or another type of stain, munang makitaan ang hemosiderin granules. Okay? Alright. So, that's the of RTEs. Again, it's the most significant because again, gikan na siya sa tubules mismo. Alright? Okay, so if PCT siya, rectangular, columnar, or convoluted cells, larger than other RTEs, and it's coarsely granular ang cytoplasm, meaning daghang granules. Distal convoluted if round or oval, and kung collecting duct, it's cuboidal, and it's never spherical ang collecting duct. It should be cuboidal, so more siya cube. And a group of 3 or more na mga kaning cuboidal cells, they are known as your renal fragments. Okay, please take note. Group of 3 or more na mga cuboidal cells, na cuboidal RTE cells, then that is known as your renal fragments. Okay, all right. So again, identification error, it could be misidentified as a spherical transitional epithelial cell since same sila og shape. But again, please take note ang nucleus. Okay, nucleus of the RTE, it's eccentric. Ang transitional cells, it's usually central, or central ilahang nucleus. And granular casts, because again, casts are elongated and then ay mga granules. And your RTEs could appear somewhat like that. Okay? Alright. So, significant values greater than 2 pa lang, di ba? Imagine na inanara kagamay, di ba? Greater than 2, minimum ra of 2, significant na siya. Because again, gikan siya sa tubules. Alright? Okay. Increased amounts because again, indicative of tubular necrosis, meaning ang tubules nimo nangamatay na ang cells. So because of necrosis na ni-express na ang cells or the cells of the tubules mismo kay gina-release na sa ihi or na-appeal na sa ihi because again, your tubules are dying, the cells are dying. Okay? Alright. Or because of tubular necrosis. Munang significant yun ang RTE. Alright? So here's an example of an RTE. This is a columnar RTE na naay fats and granules. So as you can see, pwede siyang ma-misinterpret as a granular cast. Your granular cast, magod, is pa-elongate. Alright? Na pwede pong naay granules. Okay? Alright. So muna siyang ma-mistaken siya sa granular cast. Now this one, this is an oval RTE cells. As you can see, oval siya. Your nucleus is not really center. It's eccentric, meaning nairog siya off-center. Okay? Eccentric. Alright. So that's an example of an RTE. Here's an example of a cuboidal RTE. So again, gikan ni siya sa collecting duct. If 3 or more ni sila, again, unsa atong term ana, renal fragments. Okay, and this is a stained RTE cell with hemosiderin, Prussian blue. So it means, again, hemosiderin, daghang hemoglobin na stuck sa kidney, so na-absorb sa imuhang tubular cells. Okay, so pag stain niya, nakitaan ang hemosiderin granules, again, usually in cases of severe or massive hemolysis. Diba? Okay, alright. And now we have a special type of RTE known as your oval fat bodies. Now, your oval fat bodies are a type of RTE na ang sulod niya kay fats or lipids. Okay? Alright, so and we stain them usually using these two types of stain. You have Sudan 3 or oil red. Now, your lipid-containing RTE cells, the lipid may be in three forms. Okay? Pwede siyang triglycerides, tags. Triglycerides na lang. Triglycerides. Pwedeng neutral fats. Ludas akong agi, oy. Neutral fats or cholesterol. Okay. Now, kanay mong stain, guys, Sudan 3 or oil red O, ang mas stain na niya is kaning duha. Okay? Alright. So, ang mas stain na sa imuhang kanang oil red O and Sudan 3, ang triglycerides ra and neutral fats. Okay. So, unsay color niya? Orange, red droplets. Okay? Orange, red. So, unsang pag-determine if cholesterol? We use now a polarizing microscopy, di ba? Mention ganina. Polarizing microscopy usually ginagamit for lipids or crystals. Now, for polarized microscopy, if cholesterol ang sulod sa oval fat body or muna'y lipid na composed ang oval fat body na ay Maltese cross formation. Ayan. Maltese cross formation. Okay? Maltese cross formation under polarizing microscopy or polarized microscopy, the possible lipid na naa sa oval fat body is cholesterol. Pero if mustain siya if mustain siya sa Sudan 3 or oil red O, then that could be either triglycerides or neutral fats. Okay? So, yeah, you will have these na pod mga fats when you go to chemical exam of feces. Okay? Alright. Ayan. So, clinical significance, where do we see oval fat bodies? Usually in nephrotic syndrome. Okay. Before we proceed, unsa nang Maltese cross? Oh, Maltese cross, naani siya sa parasitology. Diyos ko, na-remember pa ba? Yung something na ay Maltese cross formation na apicomplexan. It's your Babesia, di ba? Babesia species, Maltese cross. Basta gani mga Maltese cross, Maltese cross sa case study sa imuhang para, usually it's Babesia. Babesia. Alright? Okay. Alright. Kinsay vector sa Babesia? Ixodes. Okay. Ticks. Alright. Okay. Nalimtan na. Okay. Sige lang. Alright. Okay. Again, so where do we see oval fat bodies? Nephrotic syndrome. Now, sir, what is nephrotic syndrome? Now, remember in your renal anatomy, di ba? In your nephrons, we have your shield of negativity and podocytes. Now, because of these shield of negativity and podocytes, the electrical charges are balanced in a way. So there's an overall negative electrical charge surrounding the cells. Para ang ubang mga substances, example, mga high molecular weight mga substances, example, proteins and lipids, dili sila ma-appeal sa ihi. Now, in nephrotic syndrome, the shield of negativity and podocytes are damaged. So wala na'y negative charge or wala na'y nagharang ani na mga substances. So what happens in nephrotic syndrome, there is massive proteinuria. Wala na yung ink. Massive proteinuria. Proteinuria, of course, increased proteins in urine, and massive lipiduria. So, napo yung mga lipids sa ihi. Guys, please take note, nephrotic syndrome, favorite sa board exam or sa mga case studies. Basta gani, the findings are increased proteins in ihi, increased lipids, na ay oval fat bodies, na ay mga fatty cast, basta mga fat, inana. Uy, no to body shaming. Okay, it's usually nephrotic syndrome. What is nephrotic syndrome? There's a disruption in the podocytes and shield of negativity na ay disruption po sa charges. That is why these high molecular weight substances, proteins and lipids, mo appear na sa ihi. Okay, that's the point of nephrotic syndrome. So, massive proteinuria, massive lipiduria. So, since daghan mang proteins sa ihi, so imuhang serum sa imong blood, gamay imong proteins. That is why decreased albumin, usually albumin yun na, in blood. Okay? So, na hypoalbuminemia. Hypoalbuminemia. Therefore, this results to edema. So, manghupong. Okay? Alright, edema. Because again, your albumin is, in a way, it's very osmotically active in a way, or iyang ang oncotic pressure. So, iyang ginapa-retain ang water within the blood vessels. Now, what happens, if wala na albumin, wala na makapa-retain ato, gawas ang fluids into the interstitial spaces. Munang magka-edema. Okay? Alright. So, again, massive proteinuria, massive lipiduria, nephrotic syndrome. Okay? And asa ganina, usually, ang oval fat bodies makitaan sa nephrotic syndrome. Because again, of massive lipiduria and massive proteinuria. Okay. Alright, so here's an example of oval fat bodies. Diba? Mura siya, dagan kayo siyang mga, mga circular stuff, mga fat globules nag-attach sa cell. And then, gistain siya by Sudan 3, di ba? Orange, murag red, orange, or orange na color or droplet. So, since na-stain man siya, unsay possible na lipid na naa sa umong oval fat body? It could be triglycerides or neutral fats. Okay. And we have here, again, oval fat body under bright field. And then, under polarized, kani, muna siya Maltese cross, So, kinsa nito na Maltese cross formation sa oval fat body? Cholesterol. Okay. Alright. Ayan. Maltese cross. Okay, now we go to microorganisms, of course, for bacteria. Significant is UTI. It could be cocci or bacilli. Pero again, the most common cause of your urinary tract infection, kinsa to na bacteria? E. coli. Wag na mag-isip. And E. coli, unsa man? Cocci ang E. coli or bacilli? Ginoo ko, Lord Jesus. E. coli is a bacilli. Okay. If na dyan ni-answer cocci, bahalang nakathink man gani mo na cocci ang E. coli. Nako, sinasabi ko talaga sa inyo. Charot, okay. Again, E. coli is bacilli. Alright. And again, identification error could be amorphous phosphates and urates kay magkumpol-kumpol sila. But usually, in fresh urine, usahay makita nimo na mag-move ang, or through Brownian motion, or if motile ang organism, mag-move ang bacteria. Okay? Again, significance, UTI with WBCs. Dapat na ay WBCs para makaingon ka na UTI to siya. Kaya na infection. Kaya if wala yung WBCs, usually it could indicate na dugay na ang specimen or or dili siya infection or na-contaminated ra siya. Okay? Alright. So again, that's for bacteria. It could be cocci or bacilli. Alright. Next, again, for yeast. Ayan. Usually for Candida albicans. So these are example your yeast. And this is example your budding yeasts. So, ni mga, what we call our hyphae, di ba? Hyphae. So, these are parang mga structures sa yeast, alright, this is really intense na yeast infection. Okay? So, basically, your hyphae are just mga structures, additional structures, or your main structures ay mga yeast or sa molds, usually for survival, usually, di ba? Vegetative or aerial. Depende for spore production ba siya or for nutrients, pagkuwag nutrients. Okay? Alright, that's yeasts. Okay, alright. Again, for yeast infection, na mycelia. So, usa kain ani is known as a hyphae or hypha. Pero if daghan na sila, mycelium or mycelia. Okay? Alright. Mycelia, my lamesa. Char, joke lang. Okay, sorry. Okay. Alright, again, that's yeast. And for parasites, of course, Trichomonas vaginalis, na mention na ninyo. Parasitology, di ba? Trichomoniasis. Ping-pong disease. Okay? Sige, balik-balik. Kaya usually asymptomatic ang males. So, dili nila ma-feel. So, munang if mag-intercourse sila sa females, magbalik-balik ra. Okay? Alright. And T. vaginalis, strawberry cervix. Diba? Strawberry cervix. Naka-remember pa ani? T. vaginalis. Again, identification error could be WBCs or RTE if the trophozoite becomes non-motile. Sir, na-ay cyst ang trichomonas? Nako, sinasabi ko sa inyo. Walang cyst ang trichomonas, guys. Wala siya'y cyst. Na siya'y bro. Charot. Wala siya'y cyst. Na siya'y troph ra gyud siya. Troph. Okay? Ang trichomonas. Trichomoniasis. Trichomonas vaginalis. STI. Or a sexually transmitted infection. And last, you have your other parasites. Schistosoma hematobium. Again, your, of course, bladder fluke. Terminal prominent spine. Terminal prominent spine. And you have Enterobis vermicularis. D-shaped again. Ova, usually a sign of contamination from feces. Okay? Alright. So, okay. Alright. So, again, schistosoma hematobium, di ba? Prominent. Alright? I hope na-remember pa ni mga schistosomes, right? Di ba? Mansoni, Japonico, Mekongi, di ba? Schistosoma hematobium, bladder fluke. Usually, if urine or bladder fluke, it's schistosoma hematobium. And schistosoma hematobium can also cause bladder carcinoma. Okay, bladder carcinoma. Okay, because again of iyang spine, it could damage your mga cells. Okay, munang usually if nakay schistosoma hematobium infection ay mga hematuria, because of iyang spine damage. And furthermore, if padayon ang infection, it can cause bladder carcinoma. Okay, and the last type of cells that is here is spermatozoa. Usually wala siya identification error, wala po siya clinical significance. Spermatozoa. It could just indicate na the patient gikan na siyang nakig intercourse or nag self-love, okay? Or unsa pa man, or yeah. So sana all na ay charot lang, okay. All right. So again, that's for spermatozoa. Usually wala siya kung saan clinical significance, but naa daw disease known as retrograde ejaculation. So when you say retrograde ejaculation, instead of padulong sa urethra ang pagawas na, right, pag-ejaculate, monto siya sa bladder. So therefore, ma-mix na noon ang sperm sa imong ihi. So naa na siya presence of sperm, okay? But most of the time, I think rare daw ni siya, retrograde ejaculation. So instead padulong sa urethra, pagawas, niyato siya sa bladder. Okay, but most of the time, if na sperm sa ihi, sa mo tayo gikan sa females, alam na this, na ay bagong nabiyayaan, na nadiligan. Okay, SPG. Alright, sana all. Anyway, so that's it for the cells part of your sediments, okay? For the next video, we'll now talk about the casts, okay? What are casts, alright? Okay, so again, I'll see you on our next video as we discuss the casts, okay?